The first chapter. While Arnold Fisher was sitting at the drawing table in his home office, he was carefully going over the blueprints for the project that would be his last one before he retired. Even if his hands were not as stable as they had been in the past, his mind remained as keen as the pencils that he kept in perfect alignment on his desk after he reached the age of 65. His legacy would be the Westridge Commercial Complex, which would be the crowning achievement of his career as one of the most regarded architects in the profession in the field of architecture. His company, Pfizer Designs, has expanded from being a one-man operation to having more than 50 people working for it. Arnold had successfully navigated the perilous waters of the construction industry with a combination of talent, vision, and merciless determination that few knew lay beneath his collected demeanor. He had done this during all of the recessions and building booms that the sector had experienced. Suddenly, the doorbell rang, which caused him to lose his concentration. Arnold took a quick look at his watch. It is 9:30 p.m. Before making his way down to the basement. It was through the peephole that he was able to identify Bill Dona, his attorney and one of the few people in his life whom he could trust completely. Arnold turned to Bill and opened the door for him. It is really late for a house call. Bill's normally self-assured manner appeared to be slightly subdued. Can I come in here? The topic that we need to talk about is something. When Bill was in the living room, he denied a drink and went right to work on fixing the problem. I have been administering your business for the past 20 years, Arnold. Up until this point, I have never witnessed anything that has caused me to question your judgment inside that time period. Arnold arched his brow in surprise. Continue on. An unexpected amount of activity has been seen with your accounts. Large amounts of money are being moved to holdings located abroad. Neither did I set up. Someone has accessed the funds in your pension fund. That is not possible, Arnold remarked, his tone remaining calm despite the wrath that was building up beneath the surface. I am the only person who has permission to do this. The response that Bill gave was, no longer, as he moved a folder across the coffee table. It has been 2 months since your wife, Beverly, became a co-signer on almost all of the personal property that you own. Although Arnold recognized his signature on the paperwork, he had never actually signed them. Arnold stared at them. It is a flawless forgery. Bill went on to say that there was more. I was contacted by Howard Layton, who works for your company, to phone me. When you retire the next week, there is talk of buying you out at a fraction of the value of your shares when you retire. A thought occurred to Howard. I was already aware of it. When Arnold sat back, everything began to fall into place. For a number of months, his daughter Tiffany had been putting pressure on him to plan for retirement. All of a sudden, his son Greg had developed an interest in the company's financial matters. In addition, Beverly, his wife of 41 years, had been aloof during this time, traveling to see her sister more frequently than she ever had before. Arnold questioned, "Who else is aware that you are present?" Arnold gave a slight nod, which indicated that he had already made up his mind. "No one. I came straight from the office when I found these discrepancies." Arnold was sitting by himself in his living room, which was darkened, after Bill had departed. He said, "I need you to do exactly as I say, Bill, and tell no one." It wasn't because of love that had waned over the years that the betrayal caused such a deep wound. No, what Arnold could not stand was the disrespect, the notion that he could be so simply outmaneuvered after decades of strategic thinking. Arnold could not stand it. There was a text message from Beverly that rang his phone. "Remember that you have a retirement dinner booked for tomorrow evening. Everyone is going to be present." Arnold permitted himself to smile in a chilly manner. Absolutely, each and every person would be present. Second, the family enterprise is discussed. Arnold arrived at the offices of Pfizer Designs the following morning with the same careful precision that he had always displayed. Members of staff nodded in a respectful manner as he went by. A few people have already extended their congrats on his retirement. The manner in which he recognized them was one of practiced politeness, and he observed who appeared to be really saddened by his departure and who appeared to be unable to contain their excitement. Arnold discovered his son Greg huddled with Howard Layton, the company's financial officer, in the conference room. Greg was a member of the company. Upon his arrival, they parted ways in an unpleasant manner. "Dad," Greg said with unnaturally high levels of enthusiasm. Greg Fisher, who was 34 years old at the time, had acquired his father's height but none of his father's discipline. "Shouldn't you be at home relaxing?" Tomorrow's the big day. He had joined the company 10 years ago, more out of obligation than passion, and despite the fact that the Fisher name was associated with the company, he had never moved past middle management. Arnold responded, "Howard, I'd like those quarterly projections on my desk by noon." Howard responded, "But you're retiring, and until I do, this remains my company." Arnold's tone left little room for disagreement. Arnold was just trying to tie up loose ends between the two of them. After Howard had evacuated the area, Greg made an effort to repair the damage. "Let me tell you, Dad, that we have been discussing the transfer." "I'm sure that's true," Arnold remarked in a non-committal manner. "Taking into consideration that you are retiring, it might make sense to restructure some things." As Greg checked his watch, he asked, "Where is your sister?" The Westridge investors were present for a breakfast meeting that Tiffany attended. Tiffany Fisher, in contrast to her brother, had inherited Arnold's capacity for ambition and guile. She should be back soon. She eventually became the head of business development for the company when she was 39 years old. In addition to being intelligent and determined, Arnold had recently found out that she was completely disloyal. Tiffany strode into the room, looking absolutely stunning and exuding an air of self-assurance. It was as if she had been called by the thought. Arnold responded, clearly, to the person who said, "Dad, I didn't expect to see you today." There was a momentary expression of astonishment on Tiffany's face as she said, "How was your meeting with Westridge?" "Productive. They are excited about breaking ground the following month. It is interesting because Roger Hammond called me this morning to confirm that we will be having lunch tomorrow." He appeared to be unaware of any breakfast meeting. Tiffany recovered quickly, but Roger did not. "I met with Diane from their legal team to discuss some contractual details." Arnold noticed that Greg shifted uncomfortably while Tiffany maintained eye contact. "I see. Well, I look forward to hearing all about it at the dinner tonight." Before leaving, Arnold stopped by his office and removed a small flash drive and several documents from his safe. He then placed them in his briefcase. Arnold allowed the lie to linger in the air at that moment. On his way out, he passed Tiffany's assistant, Zoe, a bright young woman who had always showed him respect. "Mister," he said as he unlocked his computer and made a few essential edits to files that would remain dormant until they were required. A call was made by her to Fisher. "Regarding the Westridge project, I am in possession of the files that you requested, including both the first drafts and the amended versions." When Arnold saw the folder, he immediately recognized an ally. "I appreciate it, Zoe. Because you pay such close attention to detail, you will be successful in this industry." Upon Arnold's arrival at her residence, Beverly had already begun making all of the necessary preparations for the evening's activities. Even though she was 63 years old, she managed to keep her form and color her blonde hair with great care in order to conceal any gray. She strode around their enormous kitchen, commanding the catering workers with the authority that she had gained through years of experience. She said, "There you are," as soon as she saw him. Arnold's response was, "I've been calling you all morning. I had certain matters to attend to at the office," he said while keeping a careful eye on her. "Last night, Bill Dona made a visit to our place." Following a brief break, Beverly's hands continued to arrange the flowers in the arrangement. Beverly responded, "Oh, what did he want?" "Just some paperwork for the retirement." "Speaking of which, who all is coming tonight?" "Just family and close friends," without making eye contact with him. "The question is, your partners from the firm?" "Of course." In response to the mention of Roy Sullivan, a real estate developer with whom Arnold had occasionally collaborated, Arnold maintained a neutral smile on his face. "Oh, and I invited Roy Sullivan." "It was Roy Sullivan. I was unaware that you two were so close." "We're not." Beverly responded too soon, but he has been quite helpful in the Westridge project, so I thought it was right to say that. Arnold gave a slight nod, and the puzzle pieces continued to fit together. "Indeed, it is." "That is very considerate of you." While he was doing so, he stopped in their bedroom to unlock Beverly's top drawer before heading upstairs to take a shower and change. You could find a burner phone tucked up beneath her scarf. Something that he had already suspected was confirmed by the texts. This affair between Beverly and Roy Sullivan had been going on for at least a year at that point. The texts that discussed the plan and how they needed to secure the assets before Arnold retired were much more damaging than the previous ones. Text messages were sent to both Greg and Tiffany, coordinating their efforts to force him out of the house and take possession of everything he had constructed. After giving the phone back in the same condition that he had found it, Arnold moved on to make preparations for his retirement meal. There was no indication on his face of the icy rage that was growing up inside of him. The third chapter. The retiring dinner was held. At the Lakeside Club, the private dining area was illuminated by warm lighting, and the sound of discussion could be heard in the background. 40 invitationees socialized with one another, sharing stories about Arnold's professional life while drinking pricey champagne. In a secluded area, Roy Sullivan and Howard Layton were heard laughing at an extreme volume. Arnold received a few glances from both of the men at various points. While wearing her chic black dress, Beverly made sure that everyone's glass was always full as she moved from one group to the next. She was the epitome of a perfect hostess. Her nervous energy was evident, despite the fact that she had barely shared a word with Arnold since they had arrived. Arnold proceeded through the gathering with deliberate movements, graciously acknowledging the congratulations that were sent to him with nods. He took note of those individuals who appeared to be truly happy for him and those who were unable to meet his gaze. Over the course of each contact, the map of betrayal and loyalty became more distinguishable. When the announcement was made that supper was going to be served, he found himself seated at the head of the long table, with Beverly to his right and Tiffany to his left. During the time when Roy Sullivan had managed to acquire a seat directly across from Beverly, Greg sat next to his mother. Arnold got to his feet and began tapping his glass to attract attention as the first course was being served. A tense silence descended upon the room. "Thank you all for coming tonight," he started out by saying. "Devoting 40 years to a profession is a significant amount of time. I have witnessed the rise and fall of structures, as well as the emergence and fall of architectural styles. Throughout it all, I have remained committed to one idea, which is integrity and design. A structure that has a solid foundation is doomed to collapse." He paused, gazing directly at his family. Relationships are the same way in this regard. They are unable to withstand pressure because they lack faith. Individuals who were aware of the underlying currents were the only ones who were able to detect the subtle change in the ambience of the room. The smile on Beverly's face became immobile. Tiffany sat up straight in her chair once again. It came as a surprise to Greg that his napkin was fascinating. Arnold added, "I'd like to make a few announcements about the future of Pfizer Designs." Howard Layton leaned forward eagerly, while Roy Sullivan's eyes furrowed. Arnold's words were intended to mark this event. "To begin, I am satisfied to share the news that the Westridge Commercial Complex will proceed according to the original concept, with one substantial modification. The construction will start immediately under my direct supervision, rather than beginning the process of breaking ground the following month." Tiffany's head sprang up, but my father informed me that the schedule has been changed. Arnold completed the task for her. In the afternoon, I had a conversation with Roger Hammond. It piqued his curiosity to learn about the alterations that were being suggested without his knowledge, and he desired to get this information. As soon as the double doors leading to the dining room opened, Bill Dona walked in while carrying a leather portfolio. This occurred before anyone else could answer. Arnold received a nod from him, and he then moved to a position close to the wall. "I have made the decision that I will not be retiring just yet." The announcement made by Arnold caused a wave of surprise to spread around the room. "When it comes to the company, there are certain areas that require my undivided attention." A voice was discovered by Beverly. "However, my sweetheart, we have everything planned out. Both the trip and the new home in Palm Springs are exciting." "Yes, the house," Arnold said thoughtfully. "I've been meaning to discuss that with you," he gestured to Bill, who stepped forward and placed the portfolio on the table. From it, Arnold withdrew several documents. "These are interesting reading," he said conversationally. "Transfer of power documents, banking authorizations, property deeds, all with my signature. Except I never signed them." The color drained from Beverly's face. Greg looked ready to bolt while Tiffany maintained her composure despite the sudden tension. "Arnold," Beverly began, her voice strained. "I don't know what you're talking about." "No," Arnold turned to Roy Sullivan. "Perhaps Roy can enlighten us. After all, it was his handwriting expert who forged my signature so convincingly." Sullivan's face hardened. "That's a serious accusation, Pfizer. You'll want to be careful." "Oh, I'm always careful," Arnold replied. Which is why I had security cameras installed in my home office 3 years ago. The footage of Beverly removing documents from my safe makes for compelling viewing. A heavy silence fell over the room. Her shock turned into a cold determination as she reached into her purse and removed a thick envelope, sliding it across the table to Arnold. She said, her voice steady, that we had planned to do this privately. Guests who had come expecting a celebration now found themselves unwilling witnesses to a family implosion. Beverly recovered first, her shock transforming into cold determination. He said in a low voice, 41 years, and this is how you choose to end it. Your pension is ours. You get nothing. Greg blurted out, emboldened by alcohol and the conviction that their plan was still salvageable. Arnold opened the envelope to find divorce papers that Beverly had already signed. There were sticky tabs that indicated where his signature was required. Arnold opened the envelope to find the divorce papers. Tiffany, who was ever more calculating, added with a cruel smile, "Congratulations on 40 years of wasting your life, old man. Did you really think we'd let you control everything forever?" Arnold surveyed the faces of his family, including his wife, his daughter, and his son, and saw no trace of remorse or affection. Instead, he saw nothing but greed and the frustration of schemes that had been disrupted. With deliberate movements, he removed a pen from his pocket and signed every sticky tab page in the divorce papers. "Understood," he said, pushing the envelope back to Beverly. Then he stood, buttoned his suit jacket, and addressed the stunned room. "Dinner is, I believe, concluded. Thank you all for coming." As he walked out, he heard Beverly hiss to Bill, "Is he serious? He just signed everything away." Bill's response was lost as the door closed behind Arnold. Outside in the cool night air, he took a deep breath and checked his watch. The first phase of his plan was complete. Now came the disappearance. Chapter 4. Going Dark. 3 days after walking out of his retirement dinner, Arnold Pfizer had effectively vanished. He'd cleared out his office at Pfizer Designs, taking only personal items and leaving no note. His cell phone went straight to voicemail. His email returned automated responses. His credit cards remained unused. Beverly Fisher paced the marble floor of their living room, phone pressed to her ear. "Pick up." "Damn it," she muttered as Tiffany's call went to voicemail for the 3rd time. She'd awakened that morning to find all the household accounts frozen. Her credit cards were declined when she tried to buy groceries. Even the utilities were scheduled to be shut off by the end of the week. The doorbell rang and Beverly rushed to answer it, hoping for Arnold. Instead, she found 2 stern-faced individuals in suits. "Mrs. Fisher, I'm Special Agent Walsh with the FBI, and this is Agent Cooper. We need to ask you some questions about Fisher Designs and certain financial irregularities." Beverly's knees nearly buckled. There must be some mistake. "My husband handles all the company finances. But our investigation indicates that you've been a signatory on several accounts where questionable transactions occurred." "I only signed what I was told to sign," Beverly stuttered, her carefully constructed world beginning to crumble. "Yes, we are looking for Mr. Fisher as well," Agent Walsh said, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. "However, our investigation indicates that you've been a signatory on several accounts." To the other side of town, Tiffany Fisher was going through her own personal crisis. When she arrived at the office, she discovered that the locks had been changed and that security guards had been posted at the entrance. "I'm sorry, Miss Pfizer," the guard said with a professional demeanor. "We have orders not to allow you or Mr. Greg Fisher on the premises pending an internal investigation." "Investigation? By whose authority?" Tiffany demanded, her usual confidence faltering. "The board of directors, ma'am. They called an emergency meeting last night." Inside, the employees had gathered in the main conference room where Bill Dona addressed them alongside Zoe Winters, Tiffany's former assistant, who now appeared to be in a position of unexpected authority. "As you've probably heard," Bill was saying, "Pfizer Designs is undergoing some structural changes. Mr. Arnold Pfizer has temporarily stepped back from day-to-day operations, but remains the majority shareholder. Until the current situation is resolved, Ms. Winters will be acting as interim operations manager." The employees murmured in confusion. Someone asked, "What about Tiffany and Greg Fisher?" Bill cleared his throat and responded, "They are currently on administrative leave pending an investigation into certain financial discrepancies." Outside the building, Tiffany's phone rang. Zoe, who was only 28 years old and had previously only worked as an assistant, appeared to be both determined and slightly overwhelmed by her new role. "Tiff, the bank just phoned. All of our accounts are frozen. There are 2 FBI agents at my apartment inquiring about offshore transfers." "Calm down," Tiffany urged, even though she felt anything but calm herself. "It's just Dad trying to scare us." Greg's voice was pitched high with terror. "Tiff, the financial institution just called. He can't possibly have." "It's not just Dad," Greg interrupted. "They mention Roy Sullivan, too. They have records of meetings, phone calls, everything." Tiffany's blood ran cold. She glanced at her watch. 11:30 a.m. By her count, that made 43 messages she'd left for her father since the retirement dinner. He hadn't responded to a single one. While this was going on, Arnold was sitting in a modest hotel room 30 meters away with a small desk laptop open in front of him. On the screen, a series of surveillance feeds showed his home, the offices of Pfizer Designs, and Roy Sullivan's penthouse apartment. Arnold watched impartially as FBI agents questioned Beverly. Tiffany was turned away from the office, and Greg paced his apartment in a panic. He observed Roy Sullivan being escorted from his building in handcuffs. The developers face a mask of fury and disbelief. A knock at the door interrupted his viewing. Arnold closed the laptop and admitted Bill Dona, who carried a thick folder and looked exhausted. "It's done," Bill said without preamble. The board voted unanimously to suspend Tiffany and Greg pending investigation. The FBI has enough evidence on Sullivan to keep him busy for months, and the divorce papers have been officially filed. Arnold nodded, showing no emotion. "And the Westridge project proceeding as planned under Zoe's supervision. She's young but capable. The investors were initially concerned, but once I showed them the original plans versus what Tiffany and Sullivan were proposing to substitute with cheaper materials, they understood the situation. The FBI is not buying it, especially after finding the offshore account in her name." Arnold noted that she had created the account 6 months ago. Long before Sullivan convinced her to betray me, the lawyer studied his old friend. "Good," Arnold said, turning to the window. "Furthermore, Beverly," Bill sighed, "claims that she was manipulated by Sullivan. Of course, she claims that she was completely ignorant." "Arnold, are you sure about this? It's not too late to step in. Minimize the damage. They're still your family." Arnold's expression hardened. "They ceased being my family the moment they decided I was worth more to them dead than alive." "Dead?" Bill echoed, horrified. "Surely they weren't." "Phase 2 of their plan," Arnold interrupted. "After securing my assets, Beverly and Sullivan planned a convenient accident during our retirement travels. Tiffany found a doctor willing to testify that I was showing early signs of dementia, making my death while operating a boat or car more plausible." Bill sank into a chair. "How did you discover all this?" "I've been suspicious for months. I planted information, monitored their reactions, and installed surveillance. The retirement announcement was the final test. It accelerated their timeline and forced them to make mistakes." Arnold turned back to his laptop and opened a different file. "I was able to accomplish this by planting information, monitoring their reactions, and installing surveillance. Now, we move to phase 2 of my plan. I need you to make some arrangements." Chapter 5: The Puppet Master. 1 week after his absence, Arnold Fisher sat in a rented cottage overlooking Lake Tahoe. The isolation suited him as he painstakingly shattered the lives of those who had deceived him. "Yes, Zoe. Mr. Pfizer, the board of directors has approved the restructuring plan. Zoe Winters reported with the evidence you provided about the financial mismanagement that occurred under Tiffany's guidance. They were eager to implement the new security protocols and the Westridge contracts redrawn as you specified." His phone rang, and he was one of only 3 people who had this number. "The investors are actually relieved. The quality controls you've added increase long-term value, even if they reduce immediate profit margins." Arnold nodded, pleased with his protégé's efficiency. He'd identified Zoe's potential early, cultivating her loyalty while keeping her at enough distance that his family never recognized her as a threat. "He is claiming that Beverly was the mastermind, that she approached him with the plan to forge your signature and seize control of your assets." Arnold allowed himself a thin smile. "Predictable, and my children." Greg is also cooperating with the authorities, pointing fingers at both Tiffany and Beverly. Zoe added that there is something else. Roy Sullivan is offering to cooperate with the authorities. Arnold said, "Of course she is. She is the only one with any backbone." Tiffany, on the other hand, has hired separate counsel and is fighting every accusation. After the call was over, Arnold opened his laptop to check on another aspect of his plan. The financial trap that he had set was working perfectly. By giving the appearance of signing the divorce papers without contesting them, he had lulled Beverly and her co-conspirators into a false sense of security. What they didn't know was that he'd already transferred the majority of his assets into new sheltered trusts, leaving only enough in the original accounts to bait his family into actions that could be traced and documented. Now, as they desperately tried to access money that wasn't there, they were creating an electronic trail of attempted fraud that strengthened his position by the hour. The attorney reported that the forensic accountants had completed their preliminary review, and that they had documented at least 30 instances in which Tiffany or Beverly had forged your signature on financial documents over the course of the previous year. The FBI is particularly interested in the offshore transfers and the pension fund. Bill's phone rang once more. That's the most damning part. There's evidence they plan to drain it completely and frame you for mismanagement, leaving the employees with nothing while they walked away with millions. Arnold's jaw tightened. The pension fund held retirement savings for every employee at Pfizer Designs, some of whom had been with him for decades. 2320. The realization that his own family would intentionally destroy the futures of those individuals for their own benefit strengthened his determination. He instructed the implementation of the contingency plan for the employees. He also instructed the transfer of the backup funds to secure the pensions at 110% of their projected value. Bill confirmed that this was already done. "There is another thing. Beverly has been attempting to get in touch with you through my office." Arnold sat in silence, gazing at the lake, after hanging up the phone. For decades, he believed that his architectural firm was his greatest creation. Now, he realized that his true masterpiece was this elaborate trap designed to give his betrayers exactly what they deserved. She is claiming that she was coerced and that Sullivan threatened her. Arnold did not make any contact with her. His third phone call of the day came just after sunset. "Mr. Pfizer, this is Detective Morales with County Police. We've detained a woman attempting to break into your Lake Tahoe property. She claims to be your daughter." 20 minutes later, Arnold walked into the small police station to find Tiffany sitting defiantly in an interview room. Her ordinarily flawless beauty was a little ragged around the edges, and she appeared untidy. When Arnold entered the room, she jumped to her feet and said, "Dad, thank God. This nasty campaign, the FBI, the board, and the frozen accounts are all examples of things that ought to be stopped." Arnold stayed standing, keeping the table between what he and the other person were talking about. Arnold said in a chilly tone, "You have destroyed everything that we have built. I do not remember your contribution to the 40 years of my work." Tiffany changed her strategy since her eyes were beginning to well up with tears. "Dad, please. An error was committed by Mom. Every single one of us did. Nevertheless, this sentence is far too severe. The word punishment suggests that I am looking for justice, but Arnold responded, "I am not." "Greg is barely able to function," Tiffany said, her veneer beginning to break. "I'm simply protecting what's mine by ruining us. Perhaps Mom will end up in jail. Would you like it to happen?" Arnold studied his daughter, seeing in her the same calculating intelligence he possessed, but none of the principles he'd tried to instill. "What I wanted," he said quietly, "was trust." With her composure utterly destroyed, Tiffany lunged across the table and said, "Clearly, that was too much to ask. You self-righteous bastard. You never gave us a chance to run things our way. You controlled everything." She cried as the cops dragged her back. "You'll regret this. We not yet have all of our cards in the deck." In the process of driving back to his cabin, Arnold pondered Tiffany's parting threat. He had anticipated most contingencies, but his daughter's desperation made her unpredictable. Arnold watched impassively as they led her away, and then he turned to Detective Morales and said, "I will not be pressing charges for the attempted break-in, but I would like a restraining order." Perhaps it was time to accelerate the final phase of his plan. Chapter 6. Pawns and Players. 2 weeks into Arnold's strategic disappearance, The situation had deteriorated dramatically for the Pfizer family. Beverly sat in her attorney's office, listening with increasing despair as he outlined their position. "Mrs. Pfizer, to be blunt, it's not good." In a statement, the attorney stated, "The divorce proceedings are moving forward, and Mr. Fisher's documentation of your activities is extensive. Your prenuptial agreement, which you signed 41 years ago, is still in effect, and the fact that you attempted to get around it by forging documents and engaging in fraudulent activity strengthens his case for getting the maximum protection that is stipulated in the provisions of the agreement." "What about the house, exactly?" Beverly inquired, her tone slightly subdued. "I have a right to claim 50% of our principal residence, right?" When it came to it, the attorney was hesitant. Approximately 5 years ago, it would appear that the residence was transferred to a corporate company. "You were the one who signed the documents." "I did not sign, ever." Beverly came to a halt. The idea dawned to her at that moment. He was aware. Doesn't he have a long history of being known? Throughout the entirety of this process, it would appear that Mr. Fisher has been several steps ahead of other people. Following her departure from the attorney's office, Beverly traveled to Greg's apartment, where she discovered her son in a disoriented and nearly collapsed state. In addition to the fact that he hadn't shaved in days, the coffee table was covered in empty booze bottles. "They fired me," he mumbled in a haze as she entered the room. After hearing the news, Beverly slumped into the couch next to him and said, "Officially terminated this morning. No severance, no references. All of us are being gradually destroyed by your father." Greg voiced his disapproval by asking, "Did you really think he wouldn't?" Beverly cringed as she recalled Arnold's brother, who had previously borrowed money from the company without permission. "Dad never forgives anyone who crosses him. Remember, Uncle Peter?" Beverly asked, trying to remember Arnold's brother. Arnold had not only made him pay back every cash, but he had also made sure that he never worked in the construction industry again. Peter had eventually relocated to Alaska, and Arnold had never spoken his name since then. Beverly stated that it is necessary for us to locate him. Put an end to this vendetta by persuading him. Greg laughed in a sarcastic manner. "Wishing you the best of luck?" Tiffany has already made an attempt. It was reported that he gazed at her as if she were a complete stranger. "Is your sister still around?" "Who will know?" Following the stunt she performed at Lake Tahoe, she went into hiding, most likely working on a desperate plan that will only make the situation even more dire. A number that was not familiar to Beverly's phone rang. A cautious response came from her. "My name is Agent Walsh, and I am Mrs. Fisher. It is imperative that you reach our office as soon as possible. As a result of our study, we have discovered new evidence." As soon as the call was over, Beverly turned her attention to her kid. "Another thing was discovered by them. Do you think that this will never come to an end?" Gregory gave a slow shake of his head. "So long as Dad doesn't decide that it's over." While Beverly and Greg struggled to come to terms with the fact that their world was falling apart, Tiffany Fisher was, in fact, plotting. She met with a man whose knowledge lay in areas that were not related to the law in a room that was inexpensive at a motel. At the same time that she was sliding across a folder that had Arnold's photograph and details, she informed him, "I need you to find someone. He has accomplished his goal, but he is not as intelligent as he believes he is." The individual, who identified himself as Mercer, flipped through the information. "Military veteran," Tiffany retorted in a hurried manner. "No, an architect. However, he is both astute and cautious." One of Mercer's eyebrows was lifted. "Do you intend to pursue your own father?" "Even by my standards, that is a little chilly. He did not give us any other option." Tiffany lost her temper. "Every single thing that we have labored for is being deliberately destroyed by him." There was only a momentary pause on Tiffany's part after she located him. "Leverage is in my requirement. Something that will compel him to reconsider his position." "You are being quite ambiguous, lady." Tiffany urged everyone to simply locate him. "I will take care of everything else." In the meantime, Arnold had gone to a remote mountain property in Colorado in order to continue the planning and execution of his anticipated counterattack. Tiffany was able to locate him precisely when he desired to be located, which was a result of the cabin in Tahoe serving its job appropriately. Currently, He was reviewing the security footage from his newly installed surveillance system when he noticed a vehicle that was strange to him driving slowly past the property. Arnold promptly picked up his phone at 38 minutes past the hour. "Bill, we have guests arriving sooner than we had anticipated." 3. Put into action the security protocol. Within the span of 1 hour, 3 vehicles that were not identified and had private security men had set positions all around the property. Arnold was completely prepared for Tiffany's next move. While he was speaking, his other phone rang. She was predictable in her desperation. The protected line for Zoe to use. "Mr. Pfizer, some new information has come to light," she informed in an anxious manner. When Arnold processed this information 20 minutes ago, the system detected it because the access came through Roy Sullivan's credentials, which should have been deactivated. Someone accessed the server containing the Westridge plants. They downloaded the original designs with your digital signature. Arnold processed this information. There was no deactivation of them. Arnold served as a corrector. Those individuals who logged in using Sullivan's account were under surveillance. It is possible to trace the IP address back to a device that Tiffany has registered. Arnold gave a slight nod to himself. In the manner that was anticipated, she is amassing ammunition and searching for a means to coerce a compromise. Have we decided to lock her out? Arnold came to the conclusion that no. Let her believe that she has discovered something of great value. It is now time to unleash the last of the traps. Arnold opened his laptop when the call was over and triggered a program that had been inactive for several weeks across the country throughout the whole country. Specifically designated recipients, journalists, industry regulators, ethics committees, and law enforcement agencies were the receivers of information packages that were released once electronic triggers were activated. Arnold observed the conclusion of his intricate chess game as it neared its last phase. The parts were all in their proper places. After being forced by greed and desperation into the corners that he had set for them, his family had made exactly the moves that he had imagined they would make themselves. The decisive confrontation was about to take place at this point. Number 7. This is a convergence. Arnold Fisher sat in the conference room of the Mountain View Resort, watching the snowfall outside, 3 weeks after he had walked out of the retirement banquet he had attended. In light of what he had planned, the sophisticated Colorado Lodge was the ideal location because it provided both luxury and stealth. While they waited, Bill Donahue, who was sitting across from him, went over the documents. In response to the question, "Are you absolutely certain about this, Arnold?" "Once we proceed, there's no going back," Arnold responded. "I've never been more certain of anything," his determination remaining unshaken. An unobtrusive knock on the door served as an announcement of Zoe Winter's arrival. She entered the room while carrying a tablet and displaying an anxious expression. "They're here," she reported it later. "All 3 of them, just as you predicted," Arnold said with a nod. "Where our other guests are currently located. The FBI agents are currently located in the lobby. Each member of the board is currently located in the neighboring conference room. For the time being, the journalists are being held temporarily at the hotel bar." "How wonderful! They should be shown in one at a time. Begin with Beverly." As soon as Beverly Fisher walked into the conference room, her self-assured stride faltered as she caught sight of her husband. Arnold sat imposingly at the head of the table, with Bill and Zoe on either side of him, giving the impression that he was completely in command. "I would like to express my gratitude to you, Arnold, for finally agreeing to meet with me," Beverly said, conjuring her most conciliatory tone. Beverly obeyed with Arnold's request to sit down, anxiously adjusting her skirt. "I want you to know that I never intended for things to go this far," Arnold said, indicating a chair. "This situation has completely gotten out of hand." Arnold spoke with a chilly tone. "I have recordings of you and Sullivan planning my accident after retirement. Please spare me. Roy Sullivan manipulated me. The diagnosis of dementia that you arranged, as well as the offshore accounts that you established a long time before Sullivan came into the discussion." Beverly was in a weak state, but shortly recovered. "In privacy, we can discuss whatever it is that you believe you know about this matter." Arnold looked at his watch and added, "For the sake of our history together, our children are the next item on the agenda." On cue, the door opened, and Greg came in looking disheveled and untidy. "In fact, Greg should be arriving right about now," the speaker said. It was the sight of his mother that caused his eyes to widen. You, Dad. What exactly is going on, Mom? I was sent a message stating that you were interested in negotiating. Greg, do take a seat. Arnold was the leader. Please wait for your sister to finish putting the finishing touches on our family gathering. After taking a seat, Greg looked nervously at his parents while he was sitting there. To tell you the truth, Dad, I am aware that things have become a mess, but I was simply following Tiffany and Mom's lead. They claimed that you were becoming increasingly erratic and that we, in order to safeguard the company, ought to steal from it. Arnold inquired in a low voice. Through the liquidation of the pension fund that provides financial support to devoted employees who have worked for me for decades. In the instant that Greg was about to speak, the door suddenly flung open, and Tiffany walked in. Her cheeks were red with the joy she felt. The folder was slapped upon the table by her fist. As she glared at her father, she made the announcement, "I've got you now. Original Westridge plans that include your signature, in addition to modified versions that lower expenditures by 40% while keeping the same price structure. Not truthful. Pure and unadulterated." Arnold beamed a slender smile. "Could it be what you believe you have discovered, Tiffany? Look once more." Tiffany, baffled, opened the folder and spread out the documents in a disorganized manner. While she was looking at them more carefully, her expression of self-assurance began to fade. "It's been 5 years since they were taken, isn't it? A completely other project altogether." "Yes, Arnold has confirmed it. This is the development of River Heights. A project in which I discovered a young worker with a lot of ambition attempting to use lesser materials and then pocket the difference to their own benefit. I terminated an employee and followed up by blacklisting them from the industry." Tiffany's face was completely devoid of color. "You have enticed me." "Yes, I did." Arnold recognized the fact that I have been luring each and every one of you for several months. Each and every one of your actions has been well foreseen and addressed. Whatever desperate measures you have taken to save yourselves, they have simply served to further ensnare you in legal ramifications. A voice was discovered by Beverly. "How come? What would be the point of confronting us if you were aware of what we were planning? What is the purpose of this elaborate retribution?" Arnold responded with a voice that was dangerously soft for the reason that you needed to have a clear understanding of exactly who you were dealing with. "You've misconstrued my self-control as a sign of weakness, and my concentration on my task as a sign of detachment. My trust in my family was misunderstood by you as naivety." Standing there, he commanded the attention of everyone in the room. "It is over as of today. In order to provide each of you with a selection, I have organized this meeting." The conference phone was activated by Arnold by pressing a button. "If you could, Zoe, please ask our other visitors to come and join us." Arnold introduced a woman who appeared to be of distinguished appearance as Judge Patricia Holbrook. The door opened once more, allowing in 2 FBI agents, 3 board members from Fisher Designs, and a distinguished-looking woman. Beverly screamed, "What is this?" with a hint of worry creeping into her tone of voice. "This," Arnold explained in a calm manner, "is your reckoning." Chapter 8 includes the ultimatum situation. During the time that the newcomers were taking their seats around the larger conference table, Arnold stayed standing, demonstrating that he was completely in control of the room. He began by saying, "Allow me to introduce everyone. Agents Walsh and Cooper, you already know. They've been building a case against all of you for fraud, forgery, and conspiracy. The board members are here to witness corporate decisions, and Judge Holbrook has kindly agreed to oversee the legal aspects of what I'm about to propose." He turned to Zoe for clarification. "Kindly disseminate the documents to everyone." Zoe presented each individual with a thick folder that included paperwork that had been neatly organized. Arnold waited as they proceeded to examine the contents, observing the expressions of realization and dismay that appeared on their faces. In his explanation, Arnold noted that these agreements represent your possibilities. In the first option, you sign a document acknowledging your guilt and agreeing to my requirements. Option 2 is that you should reject, and I will hand over to the authorities the comprehensive evidence package that I have compiled. This will ensure that you receive the maximum possible criminal charges and civil penalties. In the beginning, Beverly was the one to speak, and her voice was shaking with anger. "It is a form of blackmail." However, Judge Holbrook chimed in to clarify. "Following my examination of these documents, I can assure you that they reflect a legitimate offer to settle the dispute. This may be an unusually comprehensive statement, but it is completely legitimate. Tiffany was becoming increasingly agitated as she began to flick through her folder. You want me to give up my interests in the company? Give up all claims to your estate, admit that I have engaged in professional misconduct, and agree to a 10-year ban from working in architecture or design. Arnold took notice of the fact that the most serious criminal accusations that were brought against you would be withdrawn in exchange for this. You would stay out of jail. Greg looked up from his papers, perplexed by the situation. It is not the same with my terms. I only need to acknowledge my job, give up my shares, and relocate to the Seattle office in order to take a position as a junior designer. Arnold gave a slight nod. To a large extent, your participation was that of a follower, rather than an originator. Your design skills are impressive, and you also have the ability to take the lead. Under the supervision of a supervisor, the Seattle office might be interested in hiring someone with your qualifications. In addition, Beverly demanded, her knuckles turning white as she clenched her folder tightly. Are you expecting me to agree to a divorce deal that will leave me with little more than a modest monthly stipend and a small condo in Phoenix? Arnold claimed unequivocally that Beverly, you were involved in a plot to kill me. Be thankful that you have the opportunity to avoid spending the remaining years of your sentence in prison. It was Agent Walsh who cleared his throat. Throughout the course of our investigation, Mr. Pfizer has been cooperative. Mrs. Pfizer, the evidence showing that there was a conspiracy to commit murder is very convincing. If this agreement did not exist, we would be pursuing the highest possible charges. There was a whole crack in Beverly's facade. This is completely ridiculous. Not I, but Roy Sullivan was the one who came up with the plan. Having gone through with it, I never would have done it. Arnold stated in a chilly manner that the tapes indicated otherwise. It was very clear that you were very enthusiastic about the idea. Having always been the strategist, Tiffany had been studying her paperwork with a greater degree of attention. In regard to certain deals, there is a time limit. As of tonight, midnight. It is true. Arnold, you are correct. By the time morning arrives, I need to know who is agreeing to my demands and who is going to go to court to oppose them. He said to the members of the board, make a prudent decision. The existence of these gentlemen is due to the fact that immediately after your decisions, we will be conducting an emergency board meeting in order to formally establish the new structure of Pfizer Designs. As the Pfizer family began to feel the overwhelming weight of the situation, the audience grew silent and the phrase, with or without your participation, was spoken. Arnold observed them with a certain level of objectivity, taking note of the many stages of being aware. The expressions on their faces were crossed. She appeared to be in complete disbelief. Greg gave off an air of resignation. And it seemed as though Tiffany, who had always been his most liked child, was calculating the odds and exploring the possibilities. It was Arnold who made the announcement that he would give you 1 hour to peruse the documents and consult privately. Following that, I will have a conversation with each of you individually to hear your choices. Tiffany yelled out as he was turning to leave a moment ago. Sullivan, what about Roy Sullivan? What is the reason for his absence? Arnold took a momentary pause at the entrance. Yesterday was the day when Mr. Sullivan signed his agreement in exchange for testimony against each and every one of you. He was eligible for a number of considerations. Following Arnold's departure with the relevant authorities, the three fishermen remained in stunned quiet until Beverly broke the silence. He is playing a bluff. In all honesty, he is not going to put his own family behind bars. A sour laugh emanated from Tiffany. Do you still not understand what I'm saying, Mom? Absolutely, he will do so. Both bluffing and forgiving are constants in Dad's life. It is only because he wants us to endure the consequences that we are alive right now for him to want us to bear them rather than escape them via a fast conviction. Greg scratched his face in a tired manner. I plan to accept the offer. The city of Seattle is not what I had expected, but it is preferred to being in jail. Beverly, you can be a coward. Greg stated that he was a realist. Examine these files, please. His evidence includes recordings, paperwork, and witnesses. It is obvious to you that he has us completely in his grasp. During the course of their argument, Tiffany continued to look over her documents with an increasing sense of discomfort. As she had anticipated, the evidence against her was far more extensive than she had anticipated. Emails that she believed are destroyed. Her belief was that phone calls were private. She was positive that the meetings had been kept an open secret. The documentation is really thorough. Worst of all was the portion that described how she intended to manipulate the Westridge project by using inferior materials that would have endangered the structural integrity of the building. If that information were to become public, she would not only be charged with fraud, but she might also be charged with manslaughter in the event that the building ever collapsed. Arnold had a one-on-one meeting with each member of the family after the hour-long meeting had concluded. Greg went first, and he returned with a sour look but with documents that had been signed. The next person to go was Beverly, who emerged with red eyes but appeared to be calm. When Tiffany finally made her entrance into the room, she did so with a look of defiance still engraved on her face. Arnold responded, "Before you make your decision," well before she could even finish her sentence. "There is something that you ought to look at." He opened his laptop and aired a videotape of Roy Sullivan speaking to the FBI. In the recording, Roy Sullivan described how Tiffany had been the mastermind behind the entire scheme, including the planning for Arnold's accident. Arnold made the observation that he absolutely tossed you under the dumpster. You are claiming that you approached him with a proposal, that you managed to convince him to participate, and that you handled all of the logistics. As Tiffany's former co-conspirator methodically shredded any defense she might have created, she remained silent and scared as she watched. Arnold said, "Of course, I am aware that Sullivan is lying about a great deal of information. Despite the fact that he was never a follower of anything, the combination of his testimony and the evidence that I have acquired makes the case against you nearly impossible to refute." He stopped using the laptop. "It is up to you to decide. You may either sign and accept a future that is diminished but conceivable, or you can fight such that you spend that future in prison." Tiffany couldn't help but stare at her father, looking for any sign of vulnerability or openness. After discovering that there was none, she finally questioned, "Why offer me any deal at all? Why not just destroy me completely?" Arnold's visage remained unmoved during the entire conversation. "Simply because, in contrast to you, I do not take joy in destroying for the sake of destruction. Tiffany, I am the one who constructs things. The gap between us has always been in regard to this." The lengthy pause was followed by Tiffany picking up the pen and signing her name. The 9th chapter. To lay new groundwork. Arnold Fisher was present at the construction site of the Westridge business complex precisely 1 month after the conflict that took place in Colorado. He was observing the pouring of concrete for the foundation of the building. The sounds of heavy machinery and workers calling to one another drifted through the crisp fall air. It was the symphony of creation that had always satisfied him the most since it was so satisfying. Zoe Winters was standing next to him and reviewing the specifications on her iPad. At the age of 30, she had already attained the position of executive vice president at Pfizer Designs. Both her talent and her undying dedication have earned her a swift climb in popularity. Additionally, she indicated that the redesigned support columns are now being placed today. Using the modifications that you have made to the design, the engineers believe that this structure will be the most earthquake-resistant structure in the area. Arnold nodded as he was observing the bustling location. It is just the foundation that determines how strong a building is. Zoe took shortcuts in that area, and as a result, everything was compromised. Both of them were aware of the irony that was included within the metaphor. "Have any of them communicated with you a bit?" she inquired with great care. The expression on Arnold's face remained impassive. The previous week, Greg made sure to check in with his boss in Seattle. He appears to be punctual and attentive to instructions, as seen by his behavior. Beverly has relocated to the apartment in Phoenix and submitted a petition to renegotiate her salary. However, her request was denied. Tiffany, as well. He took a momentary pause, and a trace of something, certainly not regret but possibly acknowledgement, across his characteristics. The country is no longer home to Tiffany. Her contacts in the United States have informed him that she is currently in Dubai, where she is striving to re-establish some sort of a career outside of the scope of her professional prohibition. Before posing her subsequent inquiry, Zoe paused for a moment. "Do you ever find yourself pondering the potential outcomes that could have occurred if you hadn't discovered their plan?" Arnold redirected his attention to the designs that were laid out on a table nearby. "In my life, I have never been one to engage in idle speculation. That which took place took place. What is important right now is what we will construct in the future." They were walking around the perimeter of the enormous construction site when Arnold's phone started to ring to him. Bill Dona was the answer. The revised succession plan was given full approval by the board. The legal representative informed us, "Your retirement package has been formalized with all the protections we discussed, and the employee pension fund has been secured in the independent trust beyond the reach of any future corporate restructuring." An excellent outcome. As Arnold stated, the Pfizer Family Foundation was founded in accordance with the requirements. The original endowment has been transferred, and the charter has been filed with restrictions that preclude any member of the family from having access to or control over the money. In perpetuity, the foundation will provide financial assistance to community development projects and scholarships for architectural studies. Immediately following the conclusion of the call, Arnold took a moment to see a large steel beam being lifted into position. Against the backdrop of the sky, the framework of his ultimate professional production is beginning to take shape. "You know," Zoe ventured, "most people in your position would have been destroyed by what happened. Not just financially, but personally, to have your entire family betray you like that." Arnold turned to face his mentee, his demeanor steely. "It would have been devastating for you. In their calculations, they made a key error. My patience was interpreted as inactivity, my silence was interpreted as weakness, and my discipline was interpreted as rigidity. They failed to remember that I had spent the past 4 decades designing facilities that are designed to survive natural disasters." He refocused his gaze on the edifice that was growing. "I never built on a foundation of emotion, which is the most significant thing I did. I applied the same principles to my response, analysis, planning, and precision. Any form of vengeance that is motivated by rage will invariably fail under its own weight." Arnold was approached by a construction foreman who asked for his opinion on a modification that was being made to the design of the atrium. During the course of their conversation about the technical aspects, Arnold seemed more engaged than he has been in months. Completely devoted to the task that had always been the most important to him. At a later time, while the sun was setting and painting the construction site with amber hues, Arnold stood by himself on the platform that would eventually become the observatory deck of the skyscraper. A little image was taken out of his briefcase and removed by him. The Pfizer family from 20 years ago, when the children turned into young people, and Beverly continued to gaze at him with a look that was reminiscent of adoration. He tore the photograph into pieces without performing any kind of ceremony, and then he allowed the pieces to disperse in the wind. There was a message waiting for him on his phone from Beverly. "According to the attorneys, there is no way to get out of the deal. Please, Arnold, that we have a conversation. Having lived for 41 years must be worth something." In the same way that he removed the 45 prior attempts that she had made to get in touch with him, Arnold deleted the message without providing a prompt response. Forgiveness was not possible for certain betrayals. Even after they had been fractured, certain foundations could never again be relied upon to support weight. Arnold Fisher had gained this knowledge via his decades of experience in constructing structures that were designed to last. This knowledge was put to use in the process of destroying the deceptive structure that his family had constructed with the same systematic precision that he had used in the past to construct it. Arnold felt neither delight nor regret as he stared out over the rising skeleton of steel and concrete that would remain as his professional legacy. Instead, he filled with the serene contentment of a master craftsman who had flawlessly performed his most hard design assignment. At that moment, his thoughts were disrupted by the ringing of his phone. It was Zoe again. "Mr. Pfizer, the board members have arrived for dinner. They're eager to discuss the transition timeline." "Tell them I'll be there shortly," Arnold responded in response. "I just needed one last look at the foundation," Arnold Fisher said as he walked away from the building site without looking back. "I just needed one last look at the foundation." He was surrounded by the framework of his last architectural accomplishment, which rose behind him. A future that was totally his own creation lay in wait for him. One that is founded on the realization that true strength does not originate from what you acquire or even what you make, but rather from what you take away from yourself and refuse to let others take away from you. It is at this point that our narrative comes to a close. The comment section is where you should share your ideas. For your time, I am grateful. Please consider subscribing to this channel if you find this narrative to be enjoyable. I will see you if you click on the video that is currently displayed on the screen.